In August, when the first crop fattened and dangled under green leaves, he placed a wooden bowl full of juicy figs on the first floor landing in the morning, and when they were all gone by mid-morning, Carmela would bring the bowl back up to her kitchen. The first fig of the season he kept for himself. With a kitchen knife, he'd slice through the mahogany-colored skin to the light pink flesh. In Sicily, they called this kind of fig a tarantella. In his memory, there was an orchard of fig trees behind his home, a forest of them, and when the first crop came, he and his older brother Paolo would eat figs like candy, stuffing themselves on the sweet, juicy fruit. These were some of the memories from his childhood that Vito cherished. He could close his eyes and see himself as a boy following in his father's footsteps in the early morning at the first light of day, when his father went out hunting, the barrel of the lupara slung over his shoulder. He remembered meals at a rough-hewn wood table, his father always at the head of the table, his mother at the other end, he and Paolo across from each other, facing each other. Behind Paolo there was a door with glass panes, and beyond the glass a garden, and fig trees. He had to struggle to recall the features of his parents' faces. Even Paolo he couldn't completely recall, though he had followed Paolo around like a puppy all the years of his life in Sicily. Their images had faded over the years, and even if he was sure he would recognize them instantly were they to come back from the dead and stand before him, still he couldn't see them distinctly in his memories. But he could hear them. He heard his mother urging him to speak. Parla, Vito. He remembered how she worried because he spoke so little, and shook her head when he explained himself, by shrugging and saying, non so perché. He didn't know why he spoke so little. He heard his father's voice telling him stories at night in front of a fire. He heard Paolo laughing at him one evening when he fell asleep at the dinner table. He remembered opening his eyes, his head on the table next to his plate, awakened by Paolo's laughter. He had many such memories. Often, after some brutish ugliness required by his work, he'd sit alone in his tiny courtyard in the cold of New York and America, and remember his family in Sicily. There were also memories he wished he could banish. The worst of these was the picture of his mother flying backward, with her arms flung open, the echo of her last words still alive in the air. Run, Vito. He remembered his father's funeral. He remembered walking beside his mother, her arm around his shoulder, and the gunshots that rang out from the hills as the pallbearers dropped his father's casket and scattered. He remembered his mother kneeling over Paolo's dead body, Paolo, who had tried to follow the funeral procession looking down from the hills, and after that he recalled a series of scenes that merged with each other. As if one moment his mother knelt over Paolo weeping, and the next moment he was walking with her up the gravel path of Don Ciccio's estate. Beautiful bright flowers blooming on either side of the pathway as his mother held his hand and pulled him along. Don Ciccio was seated at a table with a bowl of oranges and a glass decanter of wine. The table was small, round, made of wood, with fat round legs. The Don was a stout man with a mustache and a mole on his right cheek. He wore a vest and a white long-sleeved shirt in the bright sunlight. The stripes of the vest slanted toward the center, making a V. A gold watch chain slung between vest pockets made a semicircle over his belly. Behind him were two great stone columns and a wrought-iron ornate fence where one of several bodyguards stood posted with shotguns slung over their shoulders. He remembered all this with great clarity, every detail. The way his mother begged for the life of her only remaining son, the way the Don refused, the motion with which his mother knelt to pull a knife from under her black dress, the way she held it to Don Ciccio's neck. Her last words, "Run, Vito," and the shotgun blast that sent her flying backward with her arms flung open. These were the memories he wished he could banish. 14 years ago, when Vito chose his current way of life by murdering Don Fanucci, Another stout pig who tried to run his little piece of New York as if it were a village in Sicily. Vito's friends thought him fearless and ruthless to his enemies. He let them believe this then and now. It was, he supposed, the truth. But it was also the truth that he wanted to kill Fanucci the instant he first saw him, and he found the resolve to do it when he saw how he might profit from the killing. Now Vito was in the study of his spacious apartment, a Don himself looking over blueprints for an estate of his own. Downstairs, Fredo and Michael were fighting again. Vito took off his jacket and hung it over the back of the desk chair. When the boys stopped shouting, Vito turned his attention again to the blueprints. Then Carmela shouted at the boys, and they started yelling again, each of them pleading their cases. Vito pushed the blueprints aside and started for the kitchen. Before he was halfway down the stairs, the shouting stopped. By the time he reached the kitchen, Michael and Fredo were seated quietly at the table, Michael reading a schoolbook, Fredo doing nothing, sitting with his hands folded in front of him. With Carmela watching and looking worried, Vito took each of the boys by the ear and pulled them into the living room. He sat on the edge of a plush chair by the front window, still holding tight to each of the boys. Fredo had started yelling, "Pop, Pop!" as soon as Vito took hold of him, while Michael, as usual, was silent. "Pop," Fredo said, "Michael took a nickel from my coat pocket." Fredo's eyes were already brimming with tears. Vito looked at Michael. His youngest son reminded Vito of himself as a boy. He seemed happiest playing alone, and he spoke very little. Michael met his father's eyes and shook his head. Vito slapped Fredo and then held him by the chin. "Well, it was in my pocket," Fredo yelled, furious, "and now it's gone." "And so you accuse your brother of being a thief?" "Well," Fredo said, "the nickel's gone, isn't it, Pop?" Vito squeezed Fredo's chin a little harder. "I ask you again," he said. "You accuse your brother of being a thief?" When Fredo's only response was to turn his eyes away, Vito let him go and said, "Apologize to Michael." Fredo said, "I apologize," half-heartedly. Behind them, the front door opened and Sonny came into the foyer. He was dressed in overalls from his work at the garage, and his face was smeared with grease along his jaw and on his forehead. Carmela, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway, gave Vito a look. Vito told the boys to go up to their room and not to come down till dinner, a punishment for Fredo, whereas Michael would have gone to his room anyway and read or entertained himself. When Sonny came into the living room, Vito said, "You come all the way to the Bronx to take a bath again?" Sonny said, "I don't mind getting some of Ma's cooking while I'm here. Besides, Pop, I want to take a bath in my place. I got to do it in the kitchen." Carmela came into the room, undoing her apron. "Look at you," she said. "You got grease all over." "That's what happens when you work in a garage, Ma." Sonny leaned down and wrapped up his mother in a big hug. "I'm going to go get cleaned up," he said, looking to Vito. "You'll stay for dinner?" Carmela asked. "Sure, Ma," Sonny said. "What are you making?" he asked, on the stairs on the way up to his room. "Veal Parmigiana," Carmela said. Vito said, "You want to check the menu, see if it's to your liking?" Sonny said, "Everything Mama makes is to my liking, right, Ma?" Without waiting for an answer, he hurried up the stairs. He knocked once, and Sonny opened the door a sliver to peek out, and then opened it all the way and said, "Pop," evidently surprised to find his father knocking at his door. He was bare-chested with a towel slung over his shoulder. Vito said, "Well, can I come in?" Sonny said, "Sure, what'd I do?" He opened the door fully and moved out of Vito's path. Sonny's room was small and simple, a single bed against one wall with a crucifix over a wood headboard, a dresser with an empty, cut-glass footed candy dish in the center of it, sheer white muslin curtains over two windows. Vito took a seat on the bed and motioned for Sonny to close the door. "Put a shirt on," he said. "I want to talk to you." "What's this about, Pop?" Sonny took his crumpled shirt from the top of the dresser and slipped into it. Something wrong? He asked, buttoning up. Vito patted the bed alongside him. Sit over here, he said. Your mother's worried about you. She's worried about the money, Sonny said, as if now he understood what was going on. That's right, Vito said. She's worried about the money. You don't miss $50. You leave a $50 bill in your pants pocket, you don't even ask her about it? Mama gave the money to Tom, Pop. Sonny sat on the bed next to Vito. Tom told me all about it. If I thought I'd lost $50, I'd be asking all over town. I know where the money is, so what's there to ask about? Vito said, What are you doing with a $50 bill, Sonny? That's more than 2 weeks' salary for you. What have I got to spend money on, Pop? I eat here most of the time. My rent's cheap. Vito folded his hands in his lap and waited. Geez, Sonny said. He jumped up and turned his back to Vito and then turned again to face him. Okay, he said. I played poker Saturday night with the Poles in Greenpoint. He raised his voice a little in his defense. It's a friendly game, Pop. Usually I lose a couple of bucks, I win a couple of bucks. This time, I won big. Sonny clasped his hands together. It's a little poker on a Saturday night, Pop. This is what you do with the money you win. You play poker with a bunch of Polacks. I take care of myself, Sonny said. You take care of yourself, Vito repeated. He pointed to the bed again, meaning Sonny should sit down. Are you saving any money? Did you start a bank account like I said? Sonny dropped onto the bed next to Vito. He looked at the floor. No, Vito said. He pinched Sonny's cheek and Sonny pulled away from him. Listen to me, Santino, he said. People are making their fortunes in the automobile industry. In the next 20, 30 years, Vito opened his hands, meaning the sky was the limit. If you work hard, he added, and I can provide you a little help here and there, by the time you're my age, you'll have more money than I can even dream of. He put his hand on Sonny's knee. You have to work hard. You have to know the industry from the ground up, and in the future, you'll be able to hire someone to take care of me when I can't make it to the bathroom on my own. Sonny leaned back against the headboard. Listen, Pop, he said. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. For what? Vito asked, surprising himself a little with the sharp edge of annoyance in his voice. Working like a slob every day, Sonny said. I work 8, 10 hours to earn Leo $50 and he pays me 50 cents. That's sucker work, Pop. You want to start out being the boss? Vito asked. Did you buy the tools and equipment, or did Leo? Do you pay the rent, or does Leo? Does the sign out front say Leo's Garage or Santino's Garage? When Sonny didn't answer, Vito added, Look at Tom, Sonny. He's got a bank account with a couple $100 saved. Plus, he's worked all summer to help pay for college. Tom knows how to buckle down and make something of himself. Vito took Sonny roughly by the chin and pulled him closer. No one gets anywhere in this life without hard work. You remember that, Santino? When Vito got up from the mattress, his face was red. He opened the bedroom door and looked back at his son. I don't want to hear anything more about work being for suckers, capiche? Take a lesson from Tom, Santino. Vito looked harshly at his son and then exited the room, leaving the door open behind him. Sonny fell back on his bed. He punched the air as if it were Tom's face. What would Pop think if he knew his precious Tom Hagen was screwing a Mick whore? That was something Sonny'd like to know. Then, somehow, the thought of that, the thought of Tom getting himself in a jam with Luca Brasi's twist, it made him smile. Michael had been following him that afternoon. He was 7 or 8 at the time, and they were coming back from Nina's in the corner with a bag of groceries for dinner. Michael saw Tom first and tugged at Sonny's pants. Sonny, he said, look. When Sonny looked, he saw a kid with a bag over his head sitting on a 3-legged chair. Johnny Fontaine and Nino Valenti, a couple of the bigger kids in the neighborhood, were smoking cigarettes a few stoops over. Sonny crossed the street and Michael tugged at his shirt. "Who is that?" he asked. "Why's he got a bag over his head?" Sonny knew it was Tom Hagen, but didn't say anything. He stopped in front of Johnny and Nino and asked Johnny what was going on. "It's Tom Hagen," Johnny said. Johnny was a thin, handsome kid with a thick head of dark hair combed down over his forehead. "He thinks he's going blind." "Blind?" Sonny said. "Why?" Nino said, "His mother died and then his father." "I know all that," Sonny said to Nino. To Johnny, he said, "Why does he think he's going blind?" Johnny said, "How do I know, Sonny? Go ask him." Then he added, "His mother went blind before she died. Maybe he thinks he caught it from her." Nino laughed, and Sonny said, "You think this is funny, Nino?" Johnny said, "Don't mind Nino, he's a twit." Sonny took a step toward Nino, and Nino put up his hands. "Hey, Sonny," he said, "I didn't mean nothing." Michael tugged at Sonny's shirt and said, "Come on, Sonny, let's go." Sonny let his gaze linger on Nino, and then he walked away with Michael following. He stopped in front of Tom and said, "What are you doing, stupid? What do you got that bag over your head for?" When Tom didn't answer, he tilted the bag back and saw that Tom had wrapped a dirty gauze bandage over his eyes. Pus and crusted blood seeped out from under the edge of the bandage over his left eye. Sonny said, "What the hell's going on, Tom?" Tom said, "I'm going blind, Sonny." They hardly knew each other at that point. They had talked once or twice, nothing more, and yet Sonny heard a pleading in Tom's voice, as if they had been lifelong companions and Tom was crying out to him. Tom said, "I'm going blind, Sonny," in a way that seemed to have given up hope at the same time it begged for help. "Vaffanculo," Sonny murmured. He turned a small circle on the sidewalk, as if his little dance might give him the couple of seconds he needed to think. He handed the groceries to Michael, wrapped his arms around Tommy, chair and all, picked him up, and carried him along the street. Tom said, "What are you doing, Sonny?" "Taking you to my father," Sonny said. And that was what he did. With Michael following wide-eyed, he carried Tom, chair and all, into his house, where his father and Clemenza were talking in the living room. He dropped the chair in front of his father. Vito, a man whose composure was legendary, looked like he might faint. Clemenza pulled the bag off Tom's head and then took a step back when he saw the blood and pus dripping out from the bandage. "Who's this?" he asked Sonny. "It's Tom Hagen." Carmela came into the room and touched Tom gently on the forehead. She tilted his head back to get a better look at his eye. "Infezione," she said to Vito. Vito whispered to her, "Get Dr. Molinari." He sounded like his throat was parched. Clemenza said, "What are you doing, Vito?" Vito raised his hand to Clemenza, silencing him. To Sonny, he said, "We'll take care of him." He asked Sonny, "Is he your friend?" Sonny thought about it a second and then said, "Yeah, Pop. He's like a brother to me." Then or now, he had no idea why he said it. Vito's gaze rested on Sonny for what seemed like the longest time, as if he were trying to look right down into his heart, and then he put his arm around Tom's shoulder and led him into the kitchen. That night and for the next 5 years until he left for college, Tom shared Sonny's room. His eye healed, he put on weight. All through school, he was Sonny's private tutor, helping him figure out things where he could and feeding him answers when all else failed. Tom did everything to please Vito, but nothing he could do would ever make him Vito's son, and nothing he could do would ever give him back his real father to raise him. That was why Sonny couldn't get too mad at him. That and the memory of the day at a little after midnight, Jukes was packed with swells in top hats and tuxes and dames wrapped in silk and fur. On stage, the trumpeter pointed his horn toward the ceiling while he worked the slide with one hand and the mute with the other, the rest of the band wailing with him through a jazzy version of She Done Him Wrong. The drummer leaned forward on his throne till it looked like his face was touching the snare drum, and he tapped out the beat wrapped up in his own private envelope of sound. On the dance floor, Couples crowded into each other and pushed up against strangers, laughing and sweating as they swigged from silver or leather-wrapped flasks. All through the spacious room, waiters hurried past each other carrying trays laden with food and drinks to scores of tables surrounded by the well-dressed and the well-heeled. Sonny and Cork had both been drinking for hours, as had Vinny, Angelo, and Nico. Stevie hadn't shown up, though they'd all agreed to celebrate at Duke's. Vinny and Angelo were both wearing tuxes. Angelo had started out the night with his hair combed back neatly off his face, but as the night and the drinks wore on, a few strands of loose hair kept breaking free and falling over his face. Nico and Sonny were dressed in double-breasted suits with big lapels and satin ties. Nico's bright green and Sonny's soft blue to go with his new fedora. Most of the dames at Duke's were in their 20s and older, but that didn't keep the boys from dancing with them, and now, sometime around midnight, they were all sweaty and in various stages of drunkenness. They'd opened their collars and loosened their ties, and they were laughing readily at each other's jokes. Cork, who was the least dressed up of the gang in a tweed suit with a vest and bow tie, was the drunkest. "Jesus," he said, announcing the obvious. "I'm in me cups, gentlemen." He rested his head on the table. "In me cups," Sonny repeated, amused by the phrase. "How about we get you some coffee?" Cork bolted upright. "Coffee?" He pulled a flask out of his pocket. "Well, I've still got first-rate Canadian malt whiskey." "Hey, you thieving Mick," Nico said. "How many bottles did you filch for yourself?" Cork said, "Shut up, you guinea-wop dago son of a bitch." Since the night of the hijacking, that line had been repeated for laughs again and again, and it didn't fail at Duke's. Vinny Romero's laughter ended abruptly when he saw Luca Brazzi walk into the club. "Hey, boys," he said to the others. "Look at this." Luca came into the club with Kelly O'Rourke on his arm. He was in tails and striped pants, a white boutonniere pinned to his lapel. Kelly pressed up against him in a slinky, cream-colored evening gown, strapless on one shoulder. A heart-shaped diamond pin at her hip held the bunched-up fabric of the dress so that it formed a kind of sash. They followed the maitre d' to a table at the front of the club, close to the band. When Luca spotted Cork and the boys watching him, he nodded to them, said a word to the maitre d', and then brought Kelly over to the table. "What do you know?" he said. "If it ain't the sneaker gang." The boys all stood, and Luca shook hands with Cork. "Who's this mug?" Luca asked, looking at Sonny. "This mug?" Cork said, shoving Sonny. "Just some palooka swiping drinks off us." "Hey," Sonny said. He scratched his head and tried to look drunker than he was. "What's the sneaker gang?" "Never mind," Cork said to Sonny. "It ain't nothing." To Luca he said, "Who's the gorgeous doll?" "What's it to you?" Luca said, and he threw a pretend punch toward Cork's jaw. Kelly introduced herself and said, "I'm Luca's girl." "Lucky dog," Cork said, looking at Luca. Kelly wrapped her arms around Luca's arm and leaned on him, her eyes on Sonny. "Hey," she said, "aren't you a friend of that college boy, Tom somebody?" "What college boy?" Luca asked Kelly without giving Sonny a chance to respond. "Just a college boy," Kelly said. "Why, Luca, you're not jealous of some college boy, are you? You know I'm your girl." She put her head on his shoulder. Luca said, "I ain't jealous of anybody, Kelly. You know me better than that." "Sure, I know you better than that," Kelly said, hugging his arm tighter. "Well," she asked Sonny, "do you know him?" "Tom somebody?" Sonny said. He dropped one hand into the pocket of his jacket and he noticed that Luca's eyes followed the motion. "Yeah, I know a college kid named Tom." "You tell him to give me a call," Kelly said. "Tell him I want to hear from him." "Oh, yeah?" Luca said. He looked at the boys. "Dames," he said, as if sharing some common knowledge about women. To Kelly, he said, "Let's go, doll." He wrapped his arm around Kelly's waist and yanked her away from the table. As soon as they were out of earshot, Nico said to Sonny, "What the hell was that about?" "Yeah, Sonny," Cork chimed in. "How the hell she know Tom?" Sonny glanced across the room and saw that Luca was looking back at him. Juke's front doors opened onto West 126th, near Lenox Avenue. Sonny stopped in front of a tent sign, unwrapped the Luckies, and lit up. The sign advertised Cab Calloway and his orchestra playing Minnie the Moocher. Sonny said, "Hidey, hidey, hidey, hi," and turned up the collar of his jacket against a cold breeze. It was still fall, but the breeze promised winter. Behind him, the door to the club opened, spilling music out onto the street. A guy with gray hair wearing a black overcoat with a fur collar came out lighting up a cigar. "What's the rumpus?" he said to Sonny, and Sonny nodded to him but didn't reply. A moment later, a skinny kid came out the door wearing an Argyle sweater. He gave the black overcoat guy a look, and then they walked away down the street together. Sonny followed them until he reached his car. He got in behind the wheel, rolled the window down, and stretched out as best he could. His head was swimming a bit, but he'd sobered up pretty quickly when Kelly asked him about Tom. In his mind's eye, he saw Kelly again as she pulled back the curtain and faced the street. She was in the window for only a second before Tom appeared behind her and closed the curtain. But in that second, Sonny took in her body, which was a dream, all white and pink with shocks of red hair. Her face was round with red lips and angled eyebrows. And even at a distance, all the way across 11th Avenue, looking up through glass, he thought he saw something about her that was angry. Sonny wondered just how dangerous this Kelly O'Rourke might be. He pushed his hat back and scratched his head. He asked himself what her play could be, and all he came up with was jealousy. She wanted to make Luca jealous. But why Tom? And how did she know Sonny knew Tom? How did she know Sonny, for that matter? He got stuck there. Dames were always hard to figure, but this one was a prize winner. If Pop found out about this, Maron, he wouldn't want to be Tom. Pop had plans for all his children. Tom had to be a lawyer and get into politics. Sonny was going to be a captain of industry. "Hey!" Cork rapped on the passenger side window and jumped into the front seat beside Sonny. "Minchia!" Sonny straightened out his hat, which he'd knocked sideways, jumping up when Cork startled him. The back doors opened and the Romero brothers and Nico piled in. "What the hell was all that about?" Nico asked. Sonny shifted around in his seat so that he could see into the back of the car. "You're not going to believe this," he said, and then he went on and explained what had happened with Tom and Kelly. "Christ," Vinny said. "Tom screwed that dame." Cork said, "If Luca finds out, even your pop won't be able to save him," Nico said. "What's her play, though?" Sonny asked Cork. "She tells Luca he's liable to kill her, too." "Liable?" Angelo said. "I'd make book on it." "So?" Sonny said, looking at Cork. "Hell if I know," Cork said. He slumped back in his seat and tilted his hat down over his eyes. "It's some kind of a mess." He was quiet, and everyone in the car was quiet along with him, waiting for him to come up with something. "I'm too drunk to think about it," he said finally. "Sonny boy," he added, "do your friend Cork a favor and drive him home, will you?" "Okay, gentlemen." Sonny straightened himself out behind the wheel. He thought about warning them against flapping their gums about Tom and Kelly and decided it wasn't necessary. Of the three of them, Nico was the biggest talker, and he hardly ever said two words to anyone outside the gang. That was a big part of why he chose them. The twins were famous for talking only to each other, and even then, not so much. Cork had the gift of gab, but he was smart and could be trusted. "I'll drive the princess here home," he said. "We gonna lay low for a while?" Nico asked. "Sure," Sonny said, "like we always do after a job. We're in no hurry." Vinny patted Sonny on the shoulder and slid out the door. Angelo said, "See you later, Cork," and followed his brother. With one foot out the door, Nico nodded toward Cork and said to Sonny, "Take this guinea wop dago-loving son of a bitch home." "Jesus," Cork said to Sonny. "They need to give that a rest." Sonny pulled out onto 126th. "Christ," he said, "I gotta work tomorrow." Cork leaned against the door and tossed his fedora on the seat beside him. He looked like a kid falling asleep on a drive, his hair all funny, shaped by the hat band. "Did you see the tits on that hat check girl?" he asked. "I wanted to dive in there and swim till I drowned." "Here we go." Cork threw his hat at Sonny. "What's the matter?" he said. "We can't all have dames falling all over us, you know. Some of us got to rely on our imagination." Sonny tossed Cork's hat back to him. "I don't have dames falling all over me." "The hell you don't," Cork said. "How many you screwed this week? Come on, Sonny, you can tell your pal Cork." When Sonny was quiet, Cork said, "What about that broad at the table next to us? Ged, she had an arse like the back of a bus." Sonny laughed, despite himself. He didn't want to get Cork started on dames. "Where are you taking me?" Cork asked. "Home, where you asked." "Nah." Cork tossed his hat up and tried to land it on his head. When he missed, he picked it up and tried again. "I don't want to go back to my place," he said. "I haven't done the bloody dishes in a week. Take me to Eileen's." "It's after 1 in the morning, Cork. You'll wake up Caitlin." "Caitlin sleeps like the dead. It's Eileen I'll be waking, and she won't mind. She loves her little brother." "Sure," Sonny said, "'cause you're all she's got left." "What kind of thing is that to say?" "She's got Caitlin and about 500 more Corcorans spread around the city to whom she's either immediately or distantly related." "Whatever you say." Sonny stopped at a red light, leaned over the steering wheel to get a good look down the side streets, and then drove through it. "Attaboy." Sonny pulled the car to the curb in front of Corcoran's bakery. He looked up over the shop to the apartments where, as he expected, all the windows were dark. They were on the corner of 43rd and 11th, parked under a streetlight. Next to the bakery, a wrought iron spear fence guarded a 2-story red stone apartment building. Weeds grew in the spaces of the fence, and the little courtyard on either side of a rough stone stoop was littered with garbage. The windows and roofline of the building were trimmed with granite that must have at some point added a bright decorative touch, but now the granite was dull and pocked and coated with grime. Cork didn't seem to be in any hurry to get out of the car, and Sonny didn't mind lingering in the quiet. Cork said, "Did you hear Nico's father lost his job? If it weren't for Nico, they'd all be on the breadline." "Where's Nico tell him the money's coming from?" "They don't ask," Cork said. "Listen," he added, "I've been waiting for the right time to tell you. Hooks doesn't want us hitting Mariposa again, and if we do, we can't use Luca as the middleman." "How come?" "Too dangerous. Mariposa's got a bee up his arse about us." Cork looked out to the street and then back to Sonny. "Gonna have to do a stick-up or a kidnapping or something." "We don't do kidnappings," Sonny said. "What are you, crazy?" When Cork didn't answer, he added, "Just let me do the planning. I'll figure out what's next." "Good," Cork said. "But it can't be too long. I'm okay," he said, "but the Romeros, the whole family'd be out in the street without the twins bringing in some dough." "Jesus," Sonny said. "What are we now, the Public Works Administration?" Cork said, "We're like part of the National Recovery Act." Sonny looked at Cork and they both cracked up. "We're the New Deal," Sonny said, still laughing. Cork pulled his hat down over his eyes. "Jesus," he said, "I'm drunk." Sonny sighed and said, "I gotta have a talk with Pop. This going to work shit is killing me." "What are you gonna tell him?" Cork asked, through his hat which had slipped down over his face. "You want to be a gangster?" "I am a gangster," Sonny said, "and so is he. Only difference is he pretends he's a legit businessman." "He is a legit businessman," Cork said. "He runs the Genkopura olive oil business." "That's right," Sonny said. And every grocery store in the city better carry Genco Pura olive oil or else take out fire insurance. Okay, so he's a ruthless businessman, Cork said. He sat up and put his hat back on his head. But pal, he added, what successful businessman isn't? Yeah, sure, Sonny said, but legit businessmen don't run the numbers and gambling and shylocking and the unions and all the rest pops into. Why's he got to pretend he's something he's not? Sonny leaned back and looked across the seat to Cork as if he might actually be hoping for an answer. He acts like people that cross him don't wind up dead, Sonny added. See, to me, that makes him a gangster. Cork said, I don't see a dime's worth of difference between the two, businessmen and gangsters. He grinned at Sonny and his eyes lit up. Did you see the Romeros with those choppers? Jesus Christi! He positioned his hands as if holding a Tommy gun and shouted, This is your last chance, Rico! Are you coming out or do you want to be carried out? He mimicked firing the Tommy gun and bounced around in his seat, banging off the dashboard and the door and seat back. Sonny got out of the car laughing. Come on, he said. I gotta be at work in a few hours. Cork made it out to the sidewalk before he looked up and said, Oh, Jesus. He fell back against the car. Shite, he yelled. And he hurried to the yard next to the bakery, took hold of 2 spears, and puked into the grass and weeds. A window opened above the bakery, and Eileen stuck her head out. Oh, for heaven's sake, she said. She had the same straight, sandy blonde hair as her brother, and it hung down on either side of her face. Her eyes were dark in the streetlight. Sonny opened his arms in a gesture that said, What can I do? He asked me to bring him here, he said, trying not to shout and still be heard. Bring him on up, Eileen said and closed the window. I'm okay. Cork straightened himself out and took a deep breath. That's better. He waved Sonny off. You can go, he said. I'm fine now. You sure? I'm sure, Cork said. He fished around in his jacket pocket and came up with a set of keys. Go on, he said, waving at Sonny again. Sonny watched while Cork struggled first to find the right key and then to get it in the keyhole. Got so, he said. How much did you have to drink? Cork said. Eileen pulled a quilt up to Caitlin's neck and straightened out the girl's hair. In the kitchen, she rinsed out the coffee pot and took a can of Maxwell House down from the cupboard. When the front door opened behind her and Sonny came into the kitchen practically carrying Cork, she turned and put her hands on her hips. The 2 of you, she said. Will you look at yourselves? Ah, sis, Cork said. He pulled away from Sonny and stood up straight. I'm fine, he said. He took off his hat and blocked the crown. Eileen said, You look fine, don't you? Sonny said, We were out celebrating a little. Eileen watched Sonny, steely-eyed. To Cork, she said, See that? And she pointed to a newspaper on the kitchen table. I've been saving it for you. She looked at Sonny and said, For both you boys. Cork took a careful step toward the table, leaned over the paper and squinted at the picture on the front page of a sharply dressed young man sprawled out on the street, his brains splattered all over the curb. A crisp straw boater lay on the sidewalk beside him. Ah, that's the Mirror for you, Cork said. Always looking for something sensational. Sure, Eileen said. Got nothing to do with you, does it? Ah, sis, Cork said and flipped the paper over. Don't sis me, Eileen said. I know what you're doing. She flipped the paper over again. This is the kind of business you're getting into. This is how you'll wind up. Ah, sis, Cork said. Eileen said, And I won't shed a tear for you, Bobby Corcoran. I guess I'll be going, Sonny said. He was standing by the door, hat in hand. Eileen looked to Sonny, and the hardness in her eyes melted a little. I'll put up some coffee, she said. She turned her back on the boys and rummaged through the sink for the innards of the coffee pot. Nah, Cork said. Not for me. I'm beat. I gotta work in the morning, Sonny said. Fine, Eileen said. I'll make it for myself. Now you've wakened me, she said to Cork. I'll be up all night. Ah, sis, Cork said. I just wanted to see Caitlin and have breakfast with her. He let go of the table which he had been holding on to with both hands, took a step around it toward the sink and stumbled. Sonny caught him before he hit the ground. For God's sake, Eileen said. To Sonny, she said, help him into the back room, will you? To Cork, she said, the bed's all made. Cork said, thanks, sis, I'm fine, I swear. He straightened out his hat, which had been knocked askew when he stumbled. Good, Eileen said. Go get yourself some sleep then, Bobby. I'll have breakfast for you in the morning. All right, Cork said. Night, Eileen. To Sonny, he said, I'm fine. You go on. I'll talk to you tomorrow. He took a careful step to Eileen, kissed her on the cheek, which she didn't acknowledge, and then went off into the back room and closed the door behind him. Sonny waited until he heard the sound of Cork collapsing into bed, and then he approached Eileen at the sink and put his arms around her. She pushed him away. Are you crazy? She whispered. With my brother in one room and my daughter in the other. Are you completely out of your mind, Sonny Corleone? Sonny whispered. I'm crazy about you, doll. Shush, she said, though they were speaking softly. Go on now, she said. Go on home. And she pushed him to the door. In the hallway, Sonny said, 5. Kelly tapped the window's bottom rail with a ball-peen hammer in an attempt to break the paint seal. After she'd been at it for a while, tapping and banging, she placed the hammer on the floor at her feet, wedged the heels of her hands under the lower sash on either side of the lock, and pushed. When it wouldn't open, she cursed it, plopped herself down on a wooden stool, and contemplated her choices. Wind rattled the glass panes. Beyond the window, the trees crowding the backyard bowed and swayed. She was in Luca's house off West Shore Road in Great Neck, just over the city line on Long Island. This place was nothing like the crowded apartment in Hell's Kitchen where she'd grown up, the youngest child and only girl among 3 brothers, but still it brought her life in that apartment to mind. Her life waiting on her brothers and her parents, like she was born a slave just because she was a girl. Everything in that apartment was rat-trap and run down, thanks to her miserable father, who was forever pissing himself wherever he collapsed and stinking up everything, and her mother wasn't much better, the pair of them. A girl couldn't have anything nice in a place like that. And what did she get for a reward after making everybody's breakfast, lunch, and dinner? A backhanded slap from her mother, and a rough word from all the men except Sean, who was a big baby. They thought they were through with her when she took up with Luca, after they threw her out like trash. But she was the one done with them. All of them. She could have better in life than they ever would let her. She was enough of a looker to be in the movies. Everybody said so. She just needed to get free of stinking rat traps like this one, and she could with Luca, because there was nobody tougher than Luca Brasi. And now she was going to have his baby, though he still didn't know it. He could go places, Luca, and he could take her with him. Only he made her crazy sometimes how he had no real ambition. Look at this place, for example, the way it was falling apart around him. It made her angry. The farmhouse was ancient. It dated well back into the last century. The rooms were all big, with high ceilings and tall windows, and the glass in all the windows was somehow wavy, as if it had melted a little. Whenever she was out here, Kelly had to remind herself that the city was only a half-hour drive away. It felt like a different world, with woods all around them and gravel roads and an empty stretch of beach that looked out over Little Neck Bay. She liked to take walks down to the water and then come back and look over the farmhouse, imagining what it could be like with some work and attention. The gravel driveway could be paved. The pocked and peeling white paint could be stripped away, and a fresh coat of maybe light blue could turn the neglected clapboard exterior into something fresh and colorful. The interior, too, desperately needed a paint job, and the floors needed to be refinished. But with work, the place could be lovely, and Kelly liked to stand at the head of the driveway and imagine how it could be. At the moment, though, all she wanted to do was open a window and let some air into the house. In the basement, an ancient coal-burning furnace grumbled and moaned as it cranked out heat. The radiators gurgled and hissed, and when the furnace was just getting going, sometimes the whole house shook with the monumental effort of keeping it heated. She found it impossible to regulate the heat. It was either sweltering or freezing, and this morning it was sweltering, even though it was windy and cold out. She pulled her robe tight around her neck and went into the kitchen, where she found a butcher knife in the sink. She thought she might slice through the paint to free the window. Behind her, Luca came down the stairs from the bedroom barefoot and bare-chested, in striped pajama bottoms. His hair, short and dark, was pressed flat on the right side of his head, where it had been mashed against the pillow. A series of sleep scars ran all the way along his cheek up to his temple. Kelly said, "You look funny, Luca." Luca plopped himself down in a kitchen chair. "What the hell's the racket?" he asked. "I thought someone was trying to bust down the door." "That was me," Kelly said. "Should I make you some breakfast?" Luca held his head in his hands and massaged his temples. "What do we got?" he asked, looking at the tabletop. Kelly opened the icebox. "We got some eggs and ham," she said. "I could make you that." Luca nodded. "What was the banging?" he asked again. "I was trying to get a window open. It's boiling. Couldn't sleep with it this hot. That's why I got up." "What time is it anyway?" "About 10, Kelly said. "Jesus Christ," Luca said. "I hate getting up before noon." "Yeah," Kelly said, "but it was boiling." Luca watched Kelly as if trying to read her. "You making some coffee?" he asked. "Yeah, sure, honey." Kelly opened a cupboard over the sink and took down a